Hi, everyone. June is Pride Month, and to celebrate pride in the diabetes community, we are highlighting amazing stories from the LGBTQ plus diabetes community to show that diabetes doesn't have to stop you from being who you are and living your best life. Please be welcoming and respectful to our guests, and if you feel the need to be bigoted, hateful, or discriminatory, we will protect our guests and respond in kind. Happy Pride! Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Diabetics Doing Things. We are telling the amazing stories of people with diabetes from all over the world. And all over the world is going to be a key discussion point today because we're going to talk a little bit about travel and our very special guest, Mr. Tanner Saunders. Thanks for coming. Welcome to the show.
Yeah. Oh my God. Thank you. I'm so honored. I've been a fan of the podcast, followed you guys for a while. I'm home for once, and it's nice to be able to talk about travel and diabetes. One thing that I know very dearly, and one thing that I know very dearly and love.
Yeah, exactly. Like we don't always get to love our diabetes, right? So it's always fun to have like something fun to like wrap around it. And Eritrea and I also love being able to travel, and that's one of the more common topics that people interact with us on, and also we just see in the diabetes community. So
Yeah.
I know you and I have been following each other. I think sometime around the later pandemic months, alongside some I think like mutual aid diabetes things is how we got introduced, but.
Yeah.
I'd love to know like your diagnosis story and kind of how you found the diabetes community. Let's start there.
My diagnosis story, I mean, obviously, it's probably like so many others. I was young. I had just turned 7. I'm from West Texas, and I had just gotten sick so much. It was like my maybe longer than many people. It's like mine was like a 2-week process of just being like, I'd go to school, get sick, feel fine, want enchiladas. I'd be like, take me to get enchiladas. We did that like cycle for a while. And then my mom said I had like 2 enchiladas, had been puking my guts up, drank like 4 giant, like Tex-Mex glasses of water, those ones that are just giant. And she was like, something's wrong. And she took me to the hospital. That's when we found out. I was in the ICU for like 7 or 8 days. I think my blood sugar was like close to 1,000 when I went in. That's been nearly 25 years. And I just very quickly realized I am not going to let this change. Like, even at like just turning 7, I was like, no, no, no. I think for me, it was that, they had me, I watched my parents practice giving an insulin shot on an orange, and the fear and the way both of my parents' hands was shaking. I just immediately was like, you two will never touch me with a needle. So I gave myself the third shot. And I think since then, maybe like 2 people have given me an insulin shot because I was like basically like incapacitated. And yeah, so I just decided very quickly, like, independence is my route. And I think that's sort of what has led me up into the position that I'm in right now.
Have you found like as you've grown like that independent spirit like comes out in other places, or it did that just like was that your sort of first experience with it?
Yeah, I would say it's definitely my first experience with it, but it is carried on throughout my life. I mean, every day, still growing. I think it's just like I realized then, even then, just being like, I don't want to be the person that needs to be taken care of. And I know that's different for everyone, but just I don't know. I'm truly not trying to joke, but like seeing my parents try to give this orange a shot just made me realize like if I want things to be comfortable, I'm gonna have to figure it out myself. And my parents gave me every opportunity in the whole world, and it's not quite that black and white, but yeah, it was good. And then also just one other thing I should say about my diagnosis story. I went to school in a really small town, and I think this was like another thing that just made me think like I can do this. My class was like 15 kids. And so then my time in school, like moving forward, was easy because like it was never like, oh, Tanner the diabetic or Tanner's got this thing. It was always like, oh, Tanner's showing this symptom. Maybe he needs a juice. And that was when we were in first grade. And so I think like all of those things kind of together, like this community that was always looking after me, and then my own self just knowing like you gotta keep yourself in check so you can do the things you want to do, really brought me a good life.
I love that like community aspect. Like obviously it's super unique. I don't think I've ever heard of anybody else's like class getting to go and like learn about diabetes kind of like as a group. But like what a cool way to normalize it among the like your peers and your friends and like people that are going to be around you for a long time. And like growing up in a small town, like you're connected to the people in your class, like for until you graduate, right? Or like move, and like some people even longer than that. Thinking back to the conversation that my like parents had with my friends, like close friends, like there were a few of them that like, got the glucagon talk, or if like, if Rob is one of my friends still, like every time I see him, he brings it up. He's like, yeah, your dad was just like, jam this into his leg if he passes out. And I was like, I don't know if you're like thinking that. I think you're just more excited about getting to like stab me with the needle than you are about actually helping me.
Yeah.
But that's neither here nor there. So like, I love the way that you framed it as well. Like you having to take ownership of that. And I think Eritrea and I talk a lot about like grief and diabetes and how it forces you to grow up like faster than your peers. And like when you're really young, like you have this new sort of view on mortality and that you are in charge of that. And it's interesting to see like how fast that happens for people, especially when you're so young, like, first grade, most of your peers are not thinking about their own mortality on a regular basis.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly it. I think that, you know, I guess like I never thought about mortality. Like I didn't understand all of these things. But the cool thing was like the people in my life, the doctors, my parents helped me realize in a way, now you are different. And not in the way we've always told you you're different. Like, hey, like this, here's a set of facts that you need to know about yourself that will always make you different in some way. And that's how my parents kind of presented it to me. And so I ran with that, and I was like kind of like hair flip, like, oh, I was like, oh, now I'm extra different. But it was good. Like they set me up to sort of like that whole thing. Like I did this thing like every year. I ended up changing schools later on and was like maybe in like sixth grade or fifth grade, and said like, hey, like to the teacher, like I need to introduce myself. And I introduced myself like, hey, I'm Tanner. I am diabetic. You might not know what that means, but like sometimes I take shots and I might have to have a snack. And if you have a question about that, like let's talk about it. So I think those sort of things like sort of helped me. So like growing up, I was kind of growing with my diabetes in a way that was helping me become so independent that it sort of allowed me to open up these doors that I think a lot of other people have. And I think the other thing is too, like my parents just also very quickly were like, you have to be your own person. And I personally have like a lot of anxiety and distress about other people who have like diabetic helicopter parents that don't give them any freedom. Like maybe my parents gave me too much freedom, but it goes both ways. Like I feel like I found a really happy middle ground, or I was gifted a really happy middle ground, and it's been nice.
Being
I
diagnosed
also,
small
I
is
think,
so weird, isn't it? Sorry, Rob. Isn't it weird to be smarter than adults at a really young age? Well, like I save me, ma'am, teacher, person.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's Rob, what you said about I definitely have some friends who just they would kill to stab me with the glucagon. And most of those kids don't know about the nasal spray now. But some kids were, that was like fun, but I trusted them. I trusted them oftentimes more than teachers. And I also had amazing teachers. But I think that just goes back to the idea that I knew any situation I get myself into, and I think that lends myself to what I do now, like traveling constantly, being in foreign places with strangers all the time, that like I sort of set a mental boundary of like someone here has to be able to help you if you can't help yourself. And that but the onus of that falls on me, you know.
I love this
it's
because
so
I always.
tricky.
Sorry, I'm not gonna cut you off again. Go ahead.
No, no, no. I love it. I just like, I've been thinking a lot about like how tricky it is, like your whole life as a kid, especially like in school, you're taught to like listen to authority and like because it's for your safety and like adults know better. And then diabetes throws you this weird curveball where it's not that. And all of a sudden, better than other people. And it's also like the stakes are way higher. It's not just like you're going to get left on a field trip. It's like, oh no, like if I don't get this, like if I don't get glucagon or if I don't get sugar, like I'm going to be in a really like tough spot. And also you adult don't want that because like it's going to cause you a bunch of problems. Like
Yeah.
let me take ownership of that. And then you're 9 years old. So it's like, I don't know. It's just it's a weird growing up thing. And it's also a weird, like advocacy is something we talk a lot about on this podcast. And
Yeah.
like, it's a really strange way to learn to advocate for yourself at the highest level, which is personal safety. And I don't know. I think it's such a tightrope to balance. And you're talking about freedom and you're talking about, your parents letting you do the things that you wanted to do. And I have seen, and I think Eritrea has seen as well, like the benefits in your life that that can give you. And at the same time, I hear from the other side, like I send empathy and love to all the helicopter parents who are just trying to protect their kids from a terrible scenario. Like it's just a
Yeah.
really tough line to walk. Some might even say dichotomy, Eritrea.
Oh my God, you and this word. Okay, first of all, I think it's so interesting that you said you're so independent, but you seem very like, I don't think you even see that you're standing on neutral ground. I'm so on one side and Rob's on the other. I'm not going to speak for him, but apparently he's very, very independent. Like he handles his lows other than packing his gummy, shout out Erica, bag. He's got this. I am the opposite. I will not suffer alone. You're going to suffer with me. Bring me some syrup. Hold my hand while I cry and be low, like all of that. And you're very in the middle where it's like, will I do the thing by myself if I have to? Yes, but also I'm going to let the people in the room know. So my question is, how did you get to a place where you were okay with being in that dichotomy in both places at the same time?
Yeah. I think that's a good question. I think part of that is with the independence, right? Like being diagnosed so young, like sure I was like mostly always able to take care of myself, but for the good chunk of that, I was still dependent on other people. Like if I ran out of snacks, like someone had to help me get them, or like if I was at school, like I couldn't just run off, even though I did a few times when like a teacher pissed me off and I was like, no, 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 that's not how this works. Oh, but I think just like trial and error and like grace. I gave myself grace. I give the people around me to understand like what's right and what's wrong. And I think more so now than, I'm 31 years old and God, when swings are crazy. And I think as the older I got and started to realize like, oh, like I'm having like an insane mood swing, then I would start to realize like, oh, is this because I'm actually mad? And my mom would always say like, check your blood sugar. And I would be like, shut up, Shanna. I'm just mad. And then she would be like, check your blood sugar, Tanner. And I would, and it would be like 400. And she'd be like, sit down. So I had to like also learn at some point that like I'm not always right. Like I might think I know what's best, but like oftentimes I am totally wrong. Um and the people who care are the ones who put me in my place. Uh I still get crazy. I will go crazy. But it is kind of a dichotomy and I don't know, trust me, I don't always find myself in the middle of it. Um but I try to, or once I've leveled out and can not see red anymore, I'd be like, we were all right. We were
Nobody should
all
hold me
correct.
accountable for any of my actions while my blood sugar was not in range. I do not respond for that person. That's a drunk version of
Yeah.
me that does not exist. Like,
Yep.
sorry.
If I was rude to you when my blood sugar was high, no, I wasn't.
No,
Just
wasn't
like,
me. I'm like
never.
Shaggy. Wasn't me.
I love that though. Like shout out to Shanna for her like presence of mind as well to know you and like know like, hey, this isn't. We talked about this a lot with lows. Like sometimes your low blood sugar brain is like your tunnel vision, the sky is falling, everything's bad, and it's like, oh well, hey, that's just like a symptom of hypoglycemia. Same thing of hyperglycemia. Like and shout out to her for being able to recognize like, hey, like you're acting a little bit off, like what's your blood sugar? And then I love your response because it's like I see myself so much in it that anytime anyone questions what my blood sugar is, I just turn into like an X-Men, like I feel like I turn into
Exactly.
a different beast entirely.
Wait, can we
Yeah.
like divert from the conversation? What about when you beep? Have you ever beeped and someone's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "No, bitch, I'm not okay."
Story, like literally story of my life. But to both of those points, now I'm married to a diabetic. And so for the last 7 years, I have been with another diabetic. And that's where the version of the people who've taken care of me has come out. And so suddenly I'll find myself to my husband, Matthew, being like, you need to check your blood sugar. And it's not like, hey, you need to check it's like, you need to check your blood sugar. And then it's like, no, 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 you're just pissing me off. And it's like, no, 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 you need to check your blood sugar. And so now like I have that back at me. And that has been like also a calming force just to be like, oh, okay. We both just like we know when we're in check. We know when it's attitude, like when one of us is actually like frustrated with something or when one of us needs to check our blood sugars.
So let's spill the tea. How did you guys meet? What's it like? Because I've never been in a relationship with someone with diabetes. So I get to, like Eritrea said, I don't play the diabetes card very often with my partner, but it's there for me to play. I can keep it in my back pocket as long as I. So what's it like for you, like in those moments, like where you guys are having discussions or disagreements or having challenges with diabetes, like both like in like what you're talking about, conflict resolution, but also just supporting each other in those moments. And also like how'd you meet?
Yeah, I start with how we met. So I had just moved to New York. I had been living here for probably about a year, and I started working for this like food and drink website. And Matthew, my now husband, this was 7 years ago, also worked there. He's a photographer. I'm a journalist, but we worked on separate teams.
Wow, power couple.
Yeah, we're kind of a power couple, power high couple, power low couple. We're usually perfectly in sync. But yeah, like on my first day, I walked in and his desk was pretty far from mine, but I saw like 5 vials of Humalog. And my first thought was, I have my own health insurance now. That's a diabetic. I should find his endocrinologist. And then I saw him, and then it was kind of like, who's his endocrinologist? Uh,
Hey.
yeah. And so the company that we worked for was kind of like it was a little bit of a rowdy food and drink publication here in New York. Like we're always like out at bars and like hanging out. And so, have a couple drinks and then I'd see him and like we never worked together in any capacity. And then I'd see him at a happy hour and then it would be like, hey, who's your doctor? Who's your doctor? His version of the story is like this weird kid just like kept coming up to me and being like, who's your doctor? And then I don't know, we just I kept asking who his doctor was until we now have the same doctor. Yeah, it just like played out. And then
You never know which pickup line is going to really work, I think is the key, right? Like, that's
exactly.
nobody's talking about who's your doctor as a pickup line. And I think more people should be.
So much plausible deniability. I don't care about you. I just want to know who your doctor is. I need a doctor.
Yeah, exactly. He was always like, you just were like eyes glazed over, having the time of your life. Who's your doctor? And I was like, yeah. And look, it worked. Like it worked. Here we are. But that said,
That's
it
so
was
cute.
yeah, it was crazy because I have other friends who are diabetic, but like having a relationship with someone, someone you spend so much time with, and we eventually ended up living together. We've lived together since 2020, and just the little things, it is we like read each other and we know, and that doesn't mean it's easy at all. Like
Yeah.
there are days where I'm just like, hey, I know your blood sugar is so high, like you're having a day, and then it might be me the next day, or we beat so much. Our home is we're both on the Omnipod and we both have Dexcom. I will say like 50% of our conversations is just being like, it's me. No, it's me. It's me. And I'm like, it's me. Because they kind of go, and I'm like, it's me. I know for a fact. So recently our our Dexcoms and Omnipod changes are in sync. So if one of us beeps, we're kind of like, hey, it's probably one of us. Like we don't have to fight about it. And the other best thing is we always have enough supplies, which I know is a blessing, but like just like I'll get a shipment in of things, he'll get a shipment in of things. And so we kind of lean on each other until we can, because the one thing about being diabetic is like you never get enough. They don't write you enough. And so
Talk about it.
if I have like a little bit of hangover supplies, then he eats into mine and I eat into his, and that's just a weird thing. Our joke is that if anyone ever broke into our apartment, they would want to steal our TV or like the laptops or whatever. But I was like, if you just open the refrigerator, you have a gold mine in the vegetable box, but you wouldn't know to look for it.
Life hack. If you're married to a person with diabetes, you're not using the butter drawer. You're using the vegetable box because
Yeah.
that's a lot of insulin. Well, so I wanna come back to the husband thing because I have so many questions. Okay. So number one, I have famously said, and God, please don't make me regret it, that I would never date someone with diabetes just because it's so much all the time. So as someone who was diagnosed as a kid, and then meeting him, and obviously I'm sure there's a thrilling love story, more to tell. But was that ever something that crossed your mind where you're just like, I don't know if I could do this, girl? Like, it's a lot of beeping.
No, like literally no. I like truly no. I never thought about it, never considered it. Like when I moved to New York, I was just on a mission to make myself a career. I moved here to sort of become a travel writer, become a travel journalist. Like I had a goal, I knew where I wanted to work, I had a plan, and Matthew was very much not a part of it. And so it just had never crossed my mind. And once it all happened, it happened so naturally and easily that it just I kind of can't imagine anything else. I couldn't
Cool.
imagine like having a non-diabetic partner. Honestly, I think I would be like, "Hey,
Bored.
do you have?" I'd be like, "Do you have some Skittles or a syringe in your bag? Because I forgot mine." And they'd
That's
be
so
like, "No, no,
cute.
no, no, no."
It's so cute that you guys have each other. It really, this is gonna sound so silly, but in my head when you were talking, I started hearing that "I'm Just a Girl" song that's so popular on TikTok
Yeah.
because it really reminded me of like hanging out with my best friend who also has diabetes and is a girl, and it's like, do I need tampons or do I need Dexcoms? Either way, I got extra right here from this
Yep.
lady. So it's such a cool feeling of like I'm safe in my little spot, and to have that with your significant other is really beautiful. I think my other second question was, you were talking so much about your independence and, as men, I'm starting to get the vibe that you guys enjoy being independent. Okay. Is your partner as independent as you are, or is he like me, where he's like, hold my hand, cuddle me, tell me I'm gonna be okay when I'm low? Like, is he just as independent as you?
Yeah, definitely. We're both
Wow.
equally independent and like I don't know, and also maybe like my vision of it all is a little clouded because we've been together for quite a while and I can't really imagine life without that, but like we do check in on each other and say like, "Hey, you're beeping, you're low," or if like one of us is asleep and like the Dexcom hasn't woken one of us up yet, like we'll be the first to wake each other up, and then it's usually just like, "Okay, good night. The sprite's over there." Yeah. So I don't know. It's kind of a mix. We check in on each other a lot, and but we do so much together. We're just like so ingrained that I guess like at some point like your independence, right? When you're in a relationship and now we're married, your independence kind of melds into this like mutual independence. And diabetes is very much both of our experience together now. But I'm often out by myself. He's often out by himself. And in those moments, it's very much Tanner. It's the Tanner show. And I'm back to knowing what I need to do for myself.
Do you share alerts with each
We
other?
do we do not.
Ooh, I
Um,
love this. You're like, I had enough beefs on my own, girl. Bye.
yeah, that is one thing we have not done. I don't think we ever will. It's just too much, and also like I am frequently like in a different time zone or different situation, and like I think that I don't know. We have gone a long time and have never had a bad incident, and I just don't think that would be. Sure, I'm sure it would be helpful, but like we're both can be so roller coastery that it would
Mhm.
probably just make us get really mad at each other.
Well, and we talk a lot about it in the diabetes community, like alert fatigue, and that's something that when Airtray and I are like going to events, they're talking a lot about like the mental burden of diabetes and like technology trying to like reduce some of that because it also does add a lot when you're keeping somebody, keeping
Alerts?
somebody else's alerts on you,
Yeah.
like, and then also your own alerts, with the combined power, with our powers combined, we can both be extremely overwhelmed all the time. And it's like,
Yeah.
we don't want that. Right. And, I also had never shared my alerts with anyone. So I kind of like, sit alone because, well, mostly I know Eritrea spits out her water. I never had the CGM to share with anyone as a young adult. So like, and, when Erica is around me, my alarms are making alarm sounds. So, it's usually fine. Anyway, but I did admit that on the air now. So now everybody knows that no one's ever
I mean,
had
we're gonna
access
have to
to that.
unpack that during the Robin Air Trade show because, girl, what do you mean? You have to share that shit with me because you're not lying on my
I
watch.
know.
Not on
I
my
have I
watch,
have a
partner.
There's gonna be like big Robin Eritrea next episodes because I also have to admit that like I don't use the butter dish to store my insulin. So like there's just a lot of things that are gonna come out where it may give me excommunicate.
Men are so weird. But okay, so Tanner, how long have you guys been together? You and your husband?
We've been together for 7 years.
Okay.
Yeah, we lived together for 4.
A lot of the independence thing, I don't know. I don't want to say it's all men because if you're listening to this episode and you are a man who's a crybaby like me, please reach out. I need to know. But do you think that it has anything to do with like diagnosis or line of work, or do you think it's because you're men? I don't know why I was thinking like maybe your line of work, just how independent being a photographer and being a journalist is. Like that's so on your own, figuring stuff out, unpacking a story, etc. So I wonder
Yeah.
if that has anything to do with like how independent both of you are and how okay with being independent both of you are.
I guess I just don't know because I know other diabetics who are guys who like can't even prick their own finger to this day, like 20 years later, and that doesn't make any sense to me. I think I would say maybe I should like backtrack and say like my independence was never true independence. It was just fear of other people,
Mhm.
and their ability to take care of me. Not to say like I had the best doctors, have had like the best teams, but just like for me, that was where it clicked. I don't know if Matt like had that same experience. I wasn't like there in, his family life, different times. Like he was diagnosed when he was 13, but I know other diabetics guys who are totally different than me. Like they want to make sure everyone is in check. They want to share it with everyone. And that's I don't know. I think that's just like a real human difference. But
I agree. I,
Mhm.
I think it's so personal. And, I usually talk about it when it's like devices because everybody has their personal
Mhm.
preferences and like the things that they like to do and the places they like to go, whatever the case may be. And it's just a person by person case. And, you could have the same interests everywhere else and like your preferences on like Dexcom share, for example, or, sharing your CGM with somebody. Like, those are all like very personal and vary so much from person to person. And I think this is like a great way to segue into something that I think is pretty universally popular, but also has a lot of nuance to it, which is travel. So you talked about it. And I love that we get to talk about this because you said like your goal when you moved to New York was to become a travel journalist. And now you're doing that. So first of all, props to like, manifesting and like making your life happen for yourself. So
thank
you
you.
work for the Points Guy, you work at the Points Guy,
Yeah.
and you talk about, and one of the things I love about that site is like the travel tips and like, hacks. We love a hack at Diabetics Doing Things. We love any kind of like, a way to kind of work around the system or like, take the road less traveled, so to speak. So something that I want to talk about before we get into like some of your favorite trips that you've been on and like some of your favorite like articles you've gotten to write and participate in do you take any like extra precautions or accommodations when you're traveling, like boarding flights early or carrying the extra medical bag? Like, where do you stand on that?
Yeah. Man, what a question. Only because I travel so much that it's hard for me to think about sometimes the things that I do being different or that anyone else does. You know what I mean? Just because I'm on the road constantly. But I will say, like, I think that the most fair answer to that is no. Like, I don't really think of myself any differently than most other people getting on a plane or wherever they're going. But that took me like a lot of time to sort of understand. So I got so lucky. I think the reason that like all of this life happened for me the way that it did when I was in seventh grade in Little Levelland, Texas, which is about 30 miles west of Lubbock. This is like a little farming town. I saw a sign, but big enough. I had a sister city. Yeah, exactly like Dallas. Um, I had a sister city. It was a suburb of Tokyo. And I just like sent in an application and I got picked and it was like totally free, got to go. And that was the first time where I like significant travel, had a conversation with my parents, like they were not invited, went with some like city council members and luckily one person happened to be a nurse, like a wife of a city council member or something. And so I went to Japan for 2 weeks and just remember feeling so bogged down by the diabeticness that was surrounding me because of other people. So like I had the frozen insulin packs, like our room that I was sharing suddenly had to have a refrigerator, even though no one else's did. And we went to a tea house and like they were like, you can't have these snacks. But I was like, why? I didn't know we were getting them in the first place. And so I think that was like that moment I was like, I'm not going to let this happen to me again. So I shifted how I planned to travel even in seventh grade and like figured it out. So now I don't travel with ice packs. I keep like a Ziploc baggie with insulin, try to make sure that it's in the right place when it needs to be. When I'm flying, it can't be. I keep a pack of emergency supplies in my backpack, everything I can need for like max 3 day delay, basically, and then switch to syringes. Uh, But yeah, everything has sort of changed, and I don't think of it any differently, and I hope other people who travel do what's best for them. But I've just had so many experiences, what has taught me what's not right for me, that I'm like a fully fleshed out full-time diabetic traveler.
I love that. I had a couple of similar experiences early on traveling with diabetes. I've shared this story before, but like one of the only times in my life, fortunately, knock on wood, that diabetes like really prevented me from doing something was I went on vacation like the summer after my diagnosis, and I wanted to go snorkeling, but on the waiver it had like, diabetes is one of the,
Mhm.
check the box if you have any of these illnesses. And I checked it, not embarrassed. I was like, yeah, I'm not embarrassed. I'm going to do this. But then they wouldn't let me do it. And then my dad kind of like put his arm around me, like, hey, maybe next time, like we don't check that box,
Yeah.
and you can, we'll be safe and you can do that. And then the next one was like taking the accommodation at the airport to pre-board when I was like 17. And I was going to like a basketball tournament. So here I am, very able-bodied, presenting, very young, like getting up to go, like if you need extra assistance. And I just remember like the interaction with the gate agent was not very good. Like they were very much like questioning whether I was able to do it. And at the time, like, I was a kid, I didn't have a lot of experience and I didn't really know how to take that. So I still don't do that to this day. I know that I can if I had to, but it's sort of a pull in case of emergency type of situation. So, yeah, I mean, I definitely understand like, doing things by the book sometimes can make things more difficult.
Yeah, I think you have to learn how you kind of tiptoe that line, right? Like, we as diabetics are legally have a disability, but we as just humans, we kind of typically fall on this side of like where the majority of the time our disease does not prevent us from falling into the bigger group of people. So like boarding an airplane, I think is an example of like, I don't think ever one time have I tried to board an airplane because I could as someone with a disability. But on hindsight, like when I get a new job, first thing I do is I let every person know I'm diabetic. I let every manager, every boss, every HR person, because the accommodations in that side of the world, like I want them to be there. Like if I'm having a bad day when I was in school, like let every single person know. So like we kind of have to walk a more interesting line of how we decide to do that. And it's in my experience, it's about how you feel in the environment in the world that you're in. Like there's no right or wrong based off of who you are and how you function.
So
I
you
love
don't,
that.
so you don't priority board. Do you tell the flight attendant that you have diabetes? Do
If
you
I had
keep
to,
that to
if
yourself?
I had to tell every flight attendant,
You'd be talking to so many of them.
they would be like, "This kid again, shut up, Tanner."
No,
No,
I totally get it.
but I do like make sure that the situations that I'm in, I have told flight attendants that I'm diabetic because I have gotten like severely low before. I think the most important thing when you're traveling is just like having your stuff that you need in front of your body within reaching distance at all time. Like one of the worst experiences I ever had, I was going on a work trip. I was landing in Switzerland. I'd flown from New York to Switzerland. Perfect flight, have watched some movies, great landing, beautiful mountains, and my blood sugar just like bottomed out. And I don't know why, but my had left my bag up in the overhead bin and we were descending. And it was that point where they were like, sit, sit. Like the flight attendant was like screaming at me. And I was like, we have to pick right now. Like either I die strapped into this chair or maybe I die bumping my head on the overhead bins, but I gotta get my Skittles. Um, and that's like the only time it's ever happened. And so now like the first thing I do when I get on a plane is like I have a little bag, like a cute little Ziploc bag that has everything I could need in an emergency. Cause also, they're like, in an emergency, you can't take anything with you. Like this little bag has what I could need to hopefully make it for a minute. Yeah. And
Same.
it's weird. And I feel weird when I'm like, the person next to me is like, what's this kid doing? And I'm just like, I don't have blinders on. Everyone should have blinders
I'm
on.
busy trying to keep myself alive. No, so I do this thing where I similarly used to travel a lot this year. I've just been taking it chill. But I would hand the flight attendant a post-it, like just like a note
Oh.
at the front. And not all the time, but just like when I remember. Because once we had someone on the pod, Keisha, who told us, who's a flight attendant herself with
Hmm.
diabetes. who told us that in an emergency situation, like say you just have a seizure for whatever
Yeah.
reason, it's really helpful to them to know that you have diabetes. So
Mhm.
I think because I was a small child also with diabetes, I was like very preoccupied with keeping yourself alive. I think my first clinical trial was a couple months after I was diagnosed, like living as a child in another country. So telling people I have diabetes is my personal safety trampoline or net, where I feel like if I tell people and I don't keep myself alive, which I probably will, then they can keep me alive, right? So I think we all have these mental obstacles that we struggle with or we think about when it's like, how independent am I in my care and how much does that impact my life when I'm traveling all the time as a travel journalist all over the world and places where people don't speak the language. I tell people in my hotels too. Do you do that? Do you tell anybody when you're
No,
traveling?
I usually don't. Yeah, I mean, maybe I should,
Me
but
neither.
yeah, I think for me,
Rob.
it's so constant, and I guess for me, it's like my system is I'm always checking in with someone who knows where I am, and that's a
Yeah.
constant. But I mean, honestly, I think that's a really interesting idea, like the sticky notes, because when it comes down to it, like I don't even wear like a medical alert bracelet. I have a bracelet that says Splenda, which is my dog's name, but that definitely wouldn't tell anyone that I'm
The
diabetic.
nuance in an emergency for somebody to pick up on that would be like, I don't know if they would get it.
Like, why does
That's
he
how I
love
feel too.
Splenda
Like
so much?
I love the sticky note because it immediately is the person is able to realize like what you're saying. And on a plane, there's a lot of ambient noise and there's other things going on. So like I think like, hey, this is happening to me, or a medical ID card or a medical ID alert bracelet. I think those are really helpful because I also am like a very large person. So like I will on a plane, especially like I take up a ton of space. And so like, I've had to a couple times like go talk to a flight attendant and be like, hey, like I have diabetes. Like, there's nothing crazy going on, but like, can I have a Sprite? And like,
Yeah.
just can I go get like a little bit of extra sugar or something? Or can you bring me an extra snack? I have diabetes. Like, I need to, my blood sugar is low. And sometimes that can be like, you can tell that they're like annoyed or they're in the middle of something else. And it's like, hey, yeah, I'm sorry to put this burden on you, but I might die. I need to like get this like taken care of.
At the
And
last
I was
minute
thinking too, like,
too, lack of
yeah,
preparation.
right. I mean, you're talking to a guy for years who just like completely was vibing, like no preparation, just like going out, no parachute, all good. And, it can be challenging. I think now, and this is another good segue, like I am much more prepared. You mentioned like Erica helps me make sure that my low snacks are reordered and I carry a bag. I saw you were messing with the bag earlier. So like what's in your like travel bag? Like how do you prep with your travel diabetes kit?
Yeah, let's
Open
see.
your
I
purse.
I got it. I got
Yeah.
it right here. This is my handy dandy bag. God, so in this, I've got an extra glucometer just in case, God forbid, I lose my phone, gets stolen. I say that like it doesn't happen to me all the time. Me losing it, not it getting stolen. Extra Humalog, extra Lantus, extra strips, gel packs. Gel packs for me are essential because when you fly as much as I do, I cannot afford to buy as many airport Sprites as would be necessary because they're like $8. And, I might go on a trip in one day. Like, I can't throw all of that away. Skittles, I've got my nasal glucagon, which I've never had to use, and I hope I never do. Just honestly, I think I prefer the gel.
Be on
I
the show. Kelly came on here and was like, "That hurt."
Oh, okay. I mean, they both sound horrible. Like, luckily, I feel
But
very
like use
fortunate.
it if you need to,
Yeah,
the
use it
listeners.
use it if I need to. Just I don't know, the nasal one is kind of wild to me. And that's kind of
Shout out
like
to
key.
Gvoke. Gvoke is a good one. It doesn't hurt. I've done it while I'm conscious. So is Rob. So try them out if you want to give
Okay,
a
okay.
new glucagon a chance. Yeah,
And then my other thing is just like extra syringes. Like I've met
for
some other
sure.
diabetics who never travel with a syringe and insulin and are so dependent on the tech. And I just think I mean this out of love, some of the newer diabetics who maybe haven't
The baby
had the
diabetics, as I
baby
call them.
diabetics, like adult baby diabetics, love them all dearly, but just haven't necessarily had the more tactile diabetes where it's just like your pockets are full of lancets and syringes and insulin. Then for maybe it's just like a fear mechanism for me. Like I need 7 syringes within my eyesight at any time, even
No,
though
we're
I've been on a pump
MacGyver.
forever.
Diabetes turns you into MacGyver. Like you will have to do. You know how Rob always says every homeowner is a farmer. I should say every person with diabetes is an engineer because we be in this bitch doing all kinds of shit. Actually, so last year I was in Berlin with this baby diabetic. I love her. She's on my team at work. And she could not get her insulin out of like the thing with, you know how they give you a big syringe to pull the insulin out of
Yeah.
into the cartridge, and she just couldn't do it. And I was like, give it to me. And I shit you not, I sat there and tried with the syringe for maybe 5 minutes, and then I was like, fuck this syringe. And I got one of our regular insulin syringes and I
Yeah.
did it with the small one. And she was like, wait, you can do that? That works? And I looked at her and I was like, girl, did it go in the hole? Is the cartridge filled? It worked. Okay. Like
Yeah.
we keep it pushing, baby. Like what are you supposed to do?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
And I
wild,
mean, I
like
think you have to have.
oh, no, I was
Go
just
ahead.
gonna say, you also don't know, like, when you're not gonna be able to charge your phone, or, like, I was on a plane recently, and all of the outlets it was like an international flight, like, 8 hours, and the TVs didn't work, the outlets didn't work, and it was like, thank God I had a syringe because my pump had been dying, like, I had gone straight to the airport from a long day of work, and, like, I just can't rely on I like the little things I know no matter what. If, like, we lose all technology today, my little syringe and my little vial is still
I'll be
there. I
right.
know how to use it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that. And like, you're so right, Eritre. Like everybody has to become a sort of an engineer and like you have to DIY because like it's the middle of the night and the pharmacy's closed and you didn't, something died or your backup battery didn't work or, something like that. Like you have to always sort of be prepared for the unexpected. And yeah, I mean, I haven't replaced the syringe in my travel kit in a while. I'm gonna do that before I go on my next trip because like the difference sometimes like you can go from there's no way to get this insulin out of my pump cartridge or out of my tubing to okay, I have exactly what I need to get to the next thing because of a syringe. Even if you don't have an extra vial of insulin or whatever the case may be, like you can get it out of there with a little ingenuity and a good syringe.
Where there's a will, there's a way. And what I need is insulin. So I'm gonna tell you something. When that kind of shit happens to me, I get so hyped. I'm like, I am her because one thing I know how to do is take care of me. Period. So like, no,
Yes.
no, no, no.
Okay, well, I do want to talk about like let's just, forget diabetes for a second. Let's talk about travel tips because, obviously like working for the points guy and like getting to experience like some really incredible and also unique travel experiences. Like what are your like best practices or like what should somebody who's curious about going to certain places or, having certain travel experiences and like what even stands out to you as some of your favorites? I will say I really loved your coverage of the new Aman Hotel in New York, which I will probably never get to go to. And I just loved your
Mm-mm.
perspective on like, I am in an absurd place and this is unbelievable. But like, being a real person in here is very strange. So what comes to mind for you?
Wow, well, thank you for saying that because talk about a real out of body experience was staying in the most expensive hotel room in New York and just being like, I don't know. I grew up on a cotton farm in Texas. Like, what am I doing here? Well, I mean, I think it's all of the things. Like, I hope that anyone who's listening, diabetic or not, like, no, you can. There are ways for you to travel without needing to be rich or needing, all of these things that I think kind of feels like an outlier. I mean, like things that make you an outlier. Like travel is there, whether it's like in your own backyard or if it's around the world. I think that I've gotten really lucky that I had a family that traveled. We drove around Texas a lot and then we drove further. Is like one set a goal, decide where you want to go and start researching it out how you can do it. And then start digging, like use resources like the Points Guy, like weird, very good resource for people who want to travel and maybe don't necessarily know how. The one thing that we do really well is we help people spend their money in ways that will help them have access to travel. A lot of that is through credit cards. So if you're putting, if you're paying for all of your diabetic supplies, like I put most of mine on one of my credit cards that's a points card, and that kind of stuff starts to all add up. Like it's not fast and furious, but it's a good way to do that. But besides that, I think just like set a goal and start researching, like find out the times when it's most affordable to go. If you want to fly in business class, figure out how many points do I need to make that happen. Like, and you can figure it out. I hate to say that there's like a favorite place. Japan will always hold a special place in my heart because it was the first time I really was like, see ya, I'm doing this by myself. But yeah, I've met so many great people in all of my travels.
I have a special place in my heart for Japan. It was going to Japan like on a solo trip was one of the things that talking about setting a goal was one of the things I wanted to do in my 20s. And I got a chance to do that. And, it was one of the best experiences of my life. And I hope I get to go again soon because it's just such a cool place. But I love that. And I think, thinking about, like you said, using the resources that are available to help you make those goals come to life and, be able to do things a certain way, whether it's like fly business class or use points that you spend on your like monthly expenses to stay at an amazing hotel down the road sometime. And working towards that, I think is really cool. And, I also like just following people who travel and like you said, like seeing somebody else's perspective and helping to figure out where you want to go because the world is a big place. It's kind of can be challenging or you can get analysis paralysis. So like I love to go everywhere. Anywhere sounds good, sometimes to me. So being able to find someone whose perspective you value and get to think about seeing yourself in a place like that, I think is really cool.
Yeah, I think that it's just you just have to decide. I think the biggest thing about travel is that we're usually our own worst enemy in deciding like I can't do this. I don't have someone to go with me. I can't afford it. And that's, that one's a little different, but there are ways around all of these things. And I think that kind of goes back to our conversation about independence. Like I got so lucky, I think after that trip to Japan when I was like 12, 13, that I just was like, I'm going to go anywhere I want to. I'm going to figure out a way to do it. So like when I graduated high school, me and my best friend hopped in my Jeep and we drove from West Texas to Chicago and then across the lakes to Boston and down the East Coast and then across the South. It my parents are freaking crazy for letting us do that. Hi Brooke, crazy for letting us do that, but like they trusted us and like we didn't have much money. We just went for it. And those like little building blocks, like once you get a taste of it, you figure out like what can I do next? Like how far can I drive until if you live in the United States, you're pretty close to somewhere cool. I promise you that. And like if you don't know what that is, email me and I'll help you find a place because we live in such an amazing, beautiful place here. Like it doesn't have to be Europe, it doesn't have to be Japan. But it just needs to
People
be
always say,
you.
why don't
I'm glad
Americans leave America? People always say that. They're like, why don't Americans leave America? And I'm just like, because our country, no offense, listen, I'm not an American, like, diehard, but because America is the size of Europe. Like, we are the size of Europe and some of Asia, baby girl. So, like, most people that live in California don't necessarily get all the way to the other side of the country. So, like, I totally see that being like, you can get in your car and drive for 18 hours, and I promise you're going to in Rob Howe's mind, you're gonna go somewhere, but you might not go where you want to go, but you're gonna go somewhere.
Yeah.
I never really clicked for me until shortly after college. One of my buddies and I drove from Colorado to Moab, Utah,
Hmm.
and we just like went on a camping hiking trip. And I mean, Moab, if you've never been, it's amazing. It's like it's got two of like the top 10 national parks, literally right next to each other, canyons and arches, and the amount of people from Asia and Europe that I met there, like kind of blew my mind because they were coming to America because they don't have that stuff in Europe. And like when you really think about it, you want to get even more like esoteric. Almost all the planets from Star Wars are based on places in the US, like and so we have this such unique geography. And, I don't know. I think it's just a really cool opportunity for us to, get outside of our own backyard and for us to, you don't have to go across the world. You can if you want. You should set your goals to do those things. But, I think that's something that we can all do better to remember. Like, you don't have to have this grand experience. You can just hop in a car with some friends, take a drive, and to quote myself via Eritrea, you'll go somewhere. May not be exactly where you planned it, but you'll end up.
And you might still have a grand experience because it sounds like for Tanner and Brooke, hi Brooke again. You guys had an amazing time that like now I remember like when COVID happened and I always go somewhere new for my birthday. Like that's just like my thing, right? Because I've been traveling, so I was really small. And I really just was like, I need to get the fuck out of this country, but I can't because Covisha has taken over. So at the time I was like, where can I go? Where can I go? And I was like, you know where I've never been? Wyoming. I'd never been. And so we got in the car and drove, I think like 20. I remember Rob and I had just started being friends, and so we were like talking about like work stuff. I just started working for the pod and stuff. And I remember being in the car and like telling the person I was with, I was like, wow, like I'm so excited about this work. And then we went to Wyoming. And I had a grand time. And I think we recorded an episode while I was in Wyoming, Rob. So you can still go really cool places. whether you're wherever you are, if you have, yeah, very eye opening to know that not just your mind can get you, or not just diabetes can get in the way of you wanting to travel, but your, I guess, preconceived notion of the experience can make you want to just stay home. So, not me though,
Yeah.
girl. Y'all stay
It's
safe.
you touched on this earlier, Tanner, but going somewhere opens your mind to like what's possible. I think you were talking about this with your trip to Japan, from a kid from West Texas in a small town. Probably not too many people in your town had been to Japan or even thought about going, and it just can the compounding effect of getting outside of your comfort zone, going experiencing new things. I'm butchering this quote, but like even mundane things are exciting when you go somewhere else and you're seeing something new. A brick wall in a new place is suddenly the coolest thing, you know? And so,
Exactly.
yeah, I would encourage everybody to do that. And also to follow along with on your professional life with your articles that you're writing at the Points Guy. You can learn a lot. And, you know, I loved your perspective. And I think it's really cool to see one of our own people with diabetes out there in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Follow the Points Guy. Like anyone who, my email address, just my name, tanner.saunders@thepointsguy.com. Like shoot me a line. We respond. Like if you have an idea of a trip, like I might not be able to tell you this specific answer, but I can point you to an article that can, I want more people to have the experiences that I have had, that I've been privileged enough to have, that I fought to have. And, it's so not all the trips are good. Some days I have lows and highs, and I'm just like, "Oh god, the Eiffel Tower, my blood sugar is 450 because I just ate a croissant." But I don't know, we can all figure it out together.
The quote was, "Creativity is piercing the mundane to find the marvelous." Bill Myers. Let's hope he's not canceled. But it's a really
Mm.
beautiful quote. And I think what you
I don't
said
think
is
that was the one I
also
was thinking of,
oh,
but I
okay.
do like that one. I think
Okay.
it gets the point across. Yeah.
So it's like,
Oh,
I thought Bill Myers. But anyways, that was really beautiful. And I think that saying that you fought for the life that you have now is something we forget about when we're living it every single day, right? Like sometimes I think about this, like, okay, right now I'm going through this horrible thing where my house, like, I have no power, like my fence flew away and like blah blah blah. But like I wanted to be able to buy my house. I prayed for this struggle and now it is mine. So
Yeah.
it's like sometimes we forget that we prayed or hoped for the experiences that we're living right now. And it sounds like you're living a pretty good one. Like that's how I want to be you. I want to travel. Like
We should
yeah.
all go on a trip
I want to.
together.
Newly married, having a good time with, a partner with diabetes, not bad for a kid from West Texas.
I think so. You guys would give Matt back in a second. You'd be like, "Hard pass, how do you do this?" But you would keep Splenda, the corgi, she's great.
A corgi named Splenda. Was there other diabetes names before we named them?
No, when we saw Splenda, it was pretty much like we had decided that she just is a Splenda. She's also kinda like gold and yellow, but she's real fake. That's the best thing is like she would be playing with you two right now, and if someone else walked in the door, she'd be like, "Bye, bitch," and just gone. Um, but that yeah, so she's Splenda through and through, and talk about anyone who has to deal with beeping. She just, I mean, truly, she's like, "Guys, just shut up, both of you." Um, she would be the first to let us die, but that's okay. That is a-okay.
That's not like Enzo knows. He knows the low alarm, so he knows when I go for a low alarm, I'm going for candy. So he's coming with.
Oh,
So
yeah.
anytime the low alarm pops up, he's like,
What's this Jennifer Coolidge line from what's that HBO show? It's like, "These queens, they're trying to kill
Oh
me."
yeah,
Like,
these gays, they're trying to kill me.
yeah,
That's
like
Splenda all the time. She's like, "Can someone just put one of those injections in me with as much insulin as possible?" I say that she loves us. She's a good dog, but she definitely
well,
did not
it's good
sign
to
up
know
for
if anything ever
this.
happened to you guys that she would love the next family just as much.
Yeah, exactly. She would love probably more. Probably more.
no beeps, no
Well,
beeps.
Mm.
Tanner, thank you so much for your time today. It was lovely to chat with you. You're on Instagram as at Tizanner. We're going to tag you in the post and include your a link to your email in the show notes. So if you guys want to hear more from Tanner, please go ahead and reach out. And thank you for being part of our Pride Month interviews as well. Happy Pride.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. Follow me, follow the Points guys, and the Points guy, and I truly mean it. Like anyone out there, reach out to me. Like I'm a friend. I'm there to answer any questions.
You said it. I'm gonna be reaching out.
Yeah, do it, do it.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, guys. We'll see you next time.